Shalom Aleichem and Baruch Habayim. Peace and blessings to everyone out there, and welcome to our first class in Hebrew, Hebrew 101. As we said in our introduction, we're going to be covering Aleph through Yud tonight. And as we cover Aleph through Yud, we're going to be covering the four different aspects of each letter. So the four different aspects of each letter are the sound that the letter makes, the shape, the graphic design, the gematria, the numerical value, and of course the letter's meaning. So with that, we'll begin. Letter 1 is Aleph, as we already have up here on the board. Aleph is the first letter of the alphabet, and to begin, I'm not actually going to talk about the sound of the letter, but the gematria. The third page on your handout is just a list of all of the different Hebrew letters. It's beautiful, but it might not be so helpful for you. It should be horizontal, like a landscape, not portrait, right? And read from right to left. That's right. Hebrew is read from right to left, as we'll soon see. A good page for you to be on while we go through these letters is page 4, I believe. The fourth page is going to have the list of all the letters, as well as the sound that they make and the numerical value. So this would be a good page to hang out on. Also, as we cover each letter, towards the very back of the book, you'll have, we actually have an example of that here. So this page here would be a good one for you to kind of hang out on as we go through the letters. The handy Hebrew alphabet. But if you'd like to take a couple of notes of some of the things we're going to say, there's going to be a lot of Torah teaching here too. As we said with Congregation Mashiach Yisrael, we like to see the deeper side of things and find a way to connect to God better and hence bring Mashiach faster. So if you'd like to take notes, the back part of your book, the last 22 pages or so of your book before the laminated handout, is practice sheets for each letter. So that's definitely a great place for you to take notes if you feel the need. So otherwise, let's begin. The Aleph here, as we said before, I'd like to start with the gematria. I'd like to start with the numerical value and not the sound. So don't pay attention to the sound for now, but the numerical value of the Aleph is 1. So that comes to teach us that the Aleph represents the one God, right? Because there's only one God and everything, and God is one, as we recall. I believe as the sages say in the Talmud, the place of the world is in God, but God's place is not in the world, right? And we follow that. So if we understand that the letter Aleph represents 1, it represents God, then we could talk about why the Aleph makes no sound by itself. So the Aleph is one of the 2 silent letters. So before we said in the introduction, the shape of the letter is going to be the body of the letter, the way it sounds, and then the vowel is going to be the soul of the letter. So because the Aleph represents God, therefore the body is not something readily apparent, not something that you could easily see. Instead, you can see the soul that's underneath. So for example, and I know that we're going to cover vowels later, but bear with me for a second. If you were to put a patak vowel underneath your Aleph, this Aleph would now sound like ah, right? Ah. If you were to make it a kamatz, it would sound like ah, okay? If you were to put a segel, for example, that's the 3 dots, it would sound like eh, okay? Aleph is a silent letter, and it's going to take the shape of the soul that's within it, whatever vowel is in it. So Aleph could be pronounced ah, oo, e, I, right?
The things you did on the bottom were vowels?
Those are vowels. They're called the nakudot. Mm-hmm. Vowels typically go under the letter, but every now and again you'll find one on top. But again, we'll cover vowels in class 3.
Vowel markings.
Vowel markings, the nakudim, the dots. So the plain one that we typically use is the patach. And again, this isn't the class for vowels, but it's a flat line underneath the letter that signifies the ah sound. So the Aleph with the ah sound, of course, the Aleph is a silent letter, so therefore it's going to be ah here, right? Or whatever other value you have, e, o, u, and so on and so forth. So the body of the Aleph is silent. And the soul of the Aleph, the vowel, is going to make the shape of the sound. It's what brings the letter to life. The numerical value of the Aleph is 1. So now let's talk about the shape a little bit. Are we clear on points 1 and 2? The Aleph is a silent letter with the numerical value 1. Okay? So what about the graphic design of the Aleph? The Aleph is, and as we are going to study here, every Hebrew letter, when you write it, it begins on the top left corner of the letter. Every Hebrew letter, when you write it, it begins at the top left corner of the letter. And that's important. It's also important to remember that Hebrew letters, when you write them, they hang on the line, right? They don't sit on the line like English letters do. So you always start at the top left corner, which is how you make the letter Yud, which we'll get to, of course. So we say that every letter begins with the letter Yud when you're writing it. So as you're going to write an Aleph, you'll start at the top left corner, and you'll come down, and then you'll bring this Yud on top, right, this little dot on top, and the dot on bottom, and that's an Aleph, okay? So what does the shape of the Aleph come to teach us? As we saw, the Aleph is a dot on the top, and a dot on the bottom, and a line in between. So we learned a little earlier in our setup here, the top on the dot, this is God, right? And the top, or the dot on the bottom rather, this is us, this is you, this is the Jewish people, this is the people of Israel, this is God's people. And what's in between us? It's a line, it's a Vav. So we got a Yud on top, a Yud on bottom, and a Vav in the middle, and we're going to cover Vav and Yud tonight, but just know for now that the Yud is a dot, right? So if it's next to the Aleph here, the Yud is just a dot, and the Vav is a line, okay?
Say that again?
The Yud is a dot, and the Vav is a line. So these are two dots, so that's two Yuds, and the line is a Vav. Again, not very important for you to remember, but as you hear me go through it, that's what it's going to be like. So the dot on the top is God, right? And the dot on the bottom is us, and there's a line that connects us or a line that separates us. So this represents the separation of heaven and earth, right? God's in heaven, we're down here on earth, but how do we communicate with God? I mean, the whole purpose of this class is to try to get a little bit closer with God, so how do we do that? What are the three ways we talked about that a finite human can connect to the infinite God? Only with ways which God prepared beforehand, right? The infinite God has to be the one who can prepare pathways for the finite creature, the finite human, to be able to connect with him. So what's the name of this pathway? The Torah, right? The Messiah. The Torah is the Messiah. Messiah is the Torah. Messiah is the perfect example of the Torah, the Word made flesh. So we have God on top. We have us on the bottom. We're separated by heaven and earth here, but the heaven and earth was pierced by what? By the Torah, right? The Torah came from Mount Sinai. Moses got it, went up to heaven to get it, and this is heaven and earth kissing, the whole Mount Sinai experience. So the two Yuds are connected through the Vav, right? The two dots are connected through the line. And so God is connected to us, and we are connected to God through the Torah, which again is Mashiach. So first what this is going to mean for us in this physical world at this physical time is accepting the yoke of heaven, right? We understand that God is God and that he has a plan, right? And that he's good and that he loves us. And in order for us to accomplish that plan and for him to accomplish that plan, it's all written in the Torah. So we need to have that first realization. That's like the baby step to actually understanding God. And that's something that we all do, Bezrat Hashem, hopefully as children. Then we can actually go into the Torah, right? And we can learn about God through the Torah, right? And this is exactly what we do every day. By studying Torah, by doing mitzvahs, and by praying, we can connect with God. And that's the symbolism of the shape of the Aleph, right? There's a dot on top, a dot on the bottom, and a line that connects them. That's God on top, us on the bottom, and it's connected through the Torah. Almost looks like a Torah scroll, right? When you open it up like that. Okay. So, the Aleph is a silent letter that doesn't make a sound unless it's got a vowel. It has a numerical value of 1, symbolizing the one God. And its graphic design is a dot on top, a dot on the bottom, and a line in between. That's God, us, and the Torah that connects us. What is the meaning of the letter Aleph? Aleph is spelled in Hebrew with an Aleph, a Lamed, and a Pei, or a Fe in this case, right? We say Aleph. Again, we'll talk about vowels later, but you can take my word for it now that this means Aleph, right? It's how you spell the letter. Like if you were to spell B, you spell it like B-E-E or something in English rather, right?
That's a word, is that what you're saying?
This is a word, Aleph. And it doesn't just mean this letter. The word Aleph actually means something. Does anybody know what the word Aleph means? Refers to, Dina? It refers to Alufo Shalom, right? The master of the universe. Aleph means master, someone who's in charge, the leader. Again, this is God's letter, right? So it only makes sense. Also, an aleph is a teacher, someone who comes to teach you something. And again, as we said, if it's God on top and us below, and the Torah that connects us, what do you need to do with the Torah? You just hold it and shake it? No, you're supposed to learn from it, right? You're supposed to read from it and learn about God from it. So again, all the more sense that it would be God's letter. Interestingly enough, and we won't do this with every letter, but I can't resist. If you reverse the spelling of aleph, you get a different word. Anybody know what that word is?
Pele.
Pele.
Wonder.
Pele means a wonder, a miracle, right? So really what this letter stands for is the miraculous God, right? That is separate from us but so connected to us and is as connected to us as far as we can reach into the Torah. And again, that's the purpose of this class, that we should be able to have a better understanding of the Torah and thereby connect to God in a better way, which will hasten the coming of Mashiach. May he come speedily in our days. Amen. So that's the aleph. Any questions on the aleph? It's a silent letter. It takes the shape of the vowel, the soul that's within it. So it could be I, it could be U, it could be E, it could be I. A little trickier to get it to I, but we'll get there. The graphic, it's got the numerical value of 1, symbolizing the one God. Also, one more thing, I guess, so long as we're on this topic. The numerical value is 1, right? But if you were to break this up into 3 letters, Yud is 10, Yud is 10, Vav is 6. That's 26, which is the numerical value of the name of God, right? A little bit lofty, but at the same point, it's not so tough. And I'll just write it out for you so that you understand. So we spell God's name. Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. So the Yud is 10. The Hey is 5. The Vav is 6. The Hey is 5. That's 26. So the Yud is 10. The Vav is 6. It's 26. So again, we're finding God in the aleph. Okay? Gematria we'll talk about. The Yud is 10.
I'm okay. You look like a 6 from here. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Nope, the Yud's 10. Yud's 10. So again, a little bit more information pointing you to the aleph, which is God.
Okay, just so you know for future reference.
Yeah.
You have to write bigger than that.
Bigger than that. Okay. Maybe in the future. Okay, so it's a silent letter. Takes the shape of the soul that's within it, the vowel. It has a numerical value of 1, which points to God. Also kind of has a numerical value of 26, which again points to God. And the shape of the letter is God above, us below, and the Torah that connects us or separates us if we don't study it. And the meaning is teacher or master or miracle. So the letter aleph really represents our miraculous God. Any questions on the aleph before we move on to the letter 2?
How do you write it, just like what they call block?
Block form. So this is, it's a cheap attempt at stam is what it is. But I wanted to point out the yuds and the vav. So if you were to just write this in a book, it's just like the text I was doing down here. So we'll do it again once real quick. This is the aleph, right? So you start at the top left, dot on the bottom, dot on the top rather, dot on the bottom, and then the aleph is. Right, so that would be to spell out the entire aleph, but this is the letter aleph right there. Any other questions? Bigger. So now we'll move on to the second letter, which is beit, beis. We'll talk a little bit about the Ashkenazic and the Sephardic dialect when we get to letters that it really matters for. But for now, you can know that the beit or beis is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Let me draw one for you. So the beit is a line on top, a line going down, and a line on the bottom with a little bit hanging out over here. Okay? That's the basic shape of a beit. Can you see that okay? In the camera and everything? Okay. Very good, very good. What's the sound of the beit? The beit makes a b sound like in B, right? But the beit also makes a v sound like in Victor. Okay? So how do you tell the difference? If the beit has a dot in it, like this square one over here, and that dot is pretty huge, it won't be that big in your book, then it's going to be pronounced hard, right? And this is a general lesson. Anytime you find a dagish is this little dot that's in the letter, right? Anytime you find a dot in a letter or a dagesh in a letter, it's going to make that sound harder. So if it's a word that can, or a letter that can switch like this will be like b, like in bait, right? Or this will be like v, as in vate, okay?
So nothing in it is the V.
Nothing in it is the V. There's a page somewhere in your handouts there, in your workbooks, that has like kind of a disambiguation page. It gives you a bunch of different letters and shows, you know, different little tiny variations and helps you to identify and distinguish between each letter. I'm not.
Couple pages ahead.
Couple pages in.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like it's got little pictures on it and everything. So, yeah, all right, I think so. So it's in there for you, and you'll be able to figure it out. On letters that don't change form, like the bait here changes form, right? It goes from a b sound. So if this was if we put the chirik vowel, which is just a dot, this would be b, right? This would say b, but this would be v, okay? Or if it was a flat line, it would be ba, and this would be va. Again, we're going to talk vowels later, but just to kind of give you an example now. If it's not a letter, if you find a dagesh, a dot in the letter that's not in a letter that changes form, then it's going to be the emphasis of that word, okay? So if you have two syllables and one of them starts with this dagesh, you know that's going to be the heavy syllable of that word, okay? Can we think of an example? Help me out here, crowd. Okay, how about this?
Oh, okay. I'm looking at Charzai.
So if I put a dagesh in this letter here, right? Pay no attention to this man behind the curtain. But if I put a dagesh here, this word's pronounced chanenu, right? If the dagesh were not there, but it was instead here on the second syllable, it would be chanenu, right? Whereas this here is chanenu, okay? And again, you'll find dageshes in letters. It just means that's going to be harder. So anytime you see a dot in a letter, that means that's the hard letter. But for the case of a B or a bait here, it's going to turn it into a B sound, like in boy. And if there's no dagesh like this one here, it's just plain, it's going to be a V as in Victor, okay? So that's the sound of the letter. That's point one. Point two, the numerical value of the letter. The letter bait has a numerical value of 2. What does this come to teach us? That you need 2 people to make a home, which parenthetically is the meaning of the word bait and its graphic design. So we can cover all 3 at once, okay? So the bait has a roof, a ceiling, it has a floor, and it has a wall, and it has a door. What's that? That's a house, right? And the word bait itself actually just so happens to mean house in Hebrew. Can you see that? Is that big enough? Not quite. We'll make that a little bit bigger. So the word bait in Hebrew means house. And again, we're not really going to focus a lot on vocab here. That was a little sloppier, huh? Sorry about that. But bait means house, okay? So the meaning of the word itself is actually house. The shape of the letter alludes to the fact that it's a house, and the numerical value 2 indicates who's in the house, right? Which reminds me of a famous story. The Midrash brings down a famous Medrash, and it says that the letter Aleph, right? We just said, what's the first letter of the alphabet? Aleph, right? Aleph bet. Aleph is the first letter. The Torah, however, our Torah, which is the Messiah and our way to connect with God, starts with the word, does anybody know? Bereshit. Bereshit. It starts with the word Bereshit, which, of course, anybody could tell you, begins with the letter bait, right? It begins with a B. It doesn't begin with the Aleph sound. There's an Aleph in it, but I don't think that's the point. So the Medrash says, how do you even spell Bereshit? Look at me. So this is the first word of the Bible. Bereshit. Means in the beginning, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So the letter Aleph, says the Mishnah, or the Midrash rather, comes before the Holy One, blessed be He. And the letter Aleph says, why did you begin your Torah with the letter Beit, right? Why did you begin your Torah with the second letter of the alphabet and not the first? I'm the first. Why shouldn't you make me the first? And God says to him for a very important reason, for several very important reasons. One, Aleph, I have something special in mind for you, right? What did God use the Aleph for? To begin the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments begin, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, right? So the Ten Commandments begin with the letter Aleph, which is a clear representation of who God is. But the entire Torah itself begins with the letter Beit. Why? Because the Beit is the house. What's the purpose of the creation of heaven and earth? I'll give you a hint. You could find it in Exodus chapter 25, verse 8, right? 25:8. What does it say? Have them build me a tabernacle. And the original Hebrew says, and this is part of why we study it, so that I can dwell within them, says the original Hebrew. A lot of translations will say, so that I can dwell within it, or I can dwell among them. The Hebrew says, within them. Have them build me a tabernacle so I can dwell within them. The purpose of the creation of heaven and earth is two. Beit is two, right? Two purposes. So that God could give us the Torah, give us Mashiach, and so that we would be able to connect to God and be with Him in His people, and He could have a dwelling place here, a house here down below, and be revealed in this physical world. That's the purpose of the creation of heaven and earth. God wants a dwelling place down here, and we have to make it for Him. How do we make it for Him? We do mitzvahs, we study Torah, we pray. We draw Him down here every chance we can. And that's the meaning of the letter Beit. So it's got the sound of a B or a V, depending on whether or not you have the dagesh. So right now this is a V, and if I were to give it a big dagesh here, now it was a V before, now it's a B, right? It's got a numerical value of 2, representing husband and wife, right? The two that are in the house together. It has the shape of a house, and the name Beit means house, right? So God is trying to make a house here with us. It also says, I believe it was Rabbi Aaron Raskin said, that Mashiach, right? If someone comes to you and says, oh, I'm the Messiah, I'm the Mashiach, what are you supposed to say to him? You're supposed to say, then complete the earth, right? What does it mean to complete the earth? In the earth, and this is kind of tough because, the letters are oriented the way it is, but maybe we could draw it on its side for you, and that would make things a little bit easier. Here, we'll get this brace sheet out of the way. So if we were to draw a Beit like you're lying on your side, we know that there's a big landmass in the east, right? We know there's a big landmass in the west. That's where we are, high in North America. And we know that if you go down to Antarctica, there's earth down below there, but there's no earth on the North Pole, right? So if someone says you're the Messiah, well, then you should go and make the North Pole a continent, right? You should complete the earth and box it off for us. So that's an interesting teaching I heard from the Midrash. The whole idea of the Beit is specifically to indicate to us that God wants to make a house with us. He wants to make a home with us. He wants an intimate relationship with us. And this is why He created heaven and earth. Any questions about the Beit? If the dagesh is in it, what sound does it make?
Hard.
Hard like what?
Buh.
Like buh. And if I were to take it out?
Soft.
Soft, like v, right. Still a lip letter, right? Buh and v. It's just about whether or not you use both lips or you put the teeth on. Sorry, I got my cup in the way. Okay, that's the letter Beit. Third letter, unless there's any questions on letter Beit. Pretty simple. Gimel's even simpler. You'll love Gimel. This is the letter Gimel. Okay. You see that okay? The letter Gimel has a sound, has a shape, has a numerical value, and has a meaning. So what is the sound of the Gimel? The Gimel makes a G sound like in Gimel, right? Or like in, not like in giraffe, but like in give me another piece of cake, right? Gimel makes a G sound like in Tigger, remember? T-I-double-G-er. And it's never going to change, right? It doesn't change like the other letters do. It's always G. So if you have a patach underneath it, and again, we'll learn the vowels later, but just for now, that's going to be Ga, right? And if you have a chirik, it's going to be Gi. And if you have a segol, it's going to be Ge, etc., etc., okay? And again, we'll learn vowels later, but the the gimel is always going to make a g sound. What is the numerical value of the gimel? The gimel is 3. Numerical value of 3. What does 3 represent in the Bible? I'll stop you right there. It represents a whole bunch, right? A whole bunch. We know the significance of 3 in the Bible is everywhere. So we're not going to talk about all of that because we assume that the readers and the listeners here, rather, are going to know all of the symbolism of the 3. But I'll give you this idea based on the sphirot, based on the 7 sphirot. We have chesed and gevurah and tiferet, right? We have loving kindness, we have severity. And what's the third? Tiferet. We have harmony, right? Because when there's 2 forces, you could say there's a dichotomy. When there's 3, it's a party, right? There's a harmony between the 3. And that's exactly what the shape of the aleph, if you remember, does for us. The aleph, if you recall, is designed with a, oh, I messed it up. It's got a dot on the bottom, a dot on top, and a line in between. This is the 3, right? God, us, and the Torah. So that's, again, 3. So Gimel represents harmony. It represents a world where everything is working together. It represents goodness.
Is that the meaning then, you're saying?
Nope, that's just the numerical value. What is the meaning? Let's start with the graphic design.
Wait, go back. What was the number thing again?
The number 3 means harmony, right? The idea of compassion, bringing in, because if there's one extreme and the other extreme, the third is the one who comes in between those two and brings peace between those two. Again, which is what the Torah does for us, which is what Mashiach does with us in our relationship with God. So, the graphic design of the Gimel is like a Vav, right? Maybe this top is a little bit long. My great apologies. It's like a Vav. It's just a line that goes up and down. It's got a head, but it's got this foot that comes out too, right? The Gimel's protruding a foot, right? It's taking a step forward with the Gimel's foot, it looks like. So the sages in the Talmud, they teach us that this is because the Gimel represents a wealthy man. And the wealthy man is running forward to go give charity, right? He's extending himself. He's trying to give charity. As you'll find out later, he's very closely related to the Dalet, which we talk about quite a bit. So the Gimel represents running to give charity. And as we understand, the name, or the meaning of the letter itself, Gimel, is related to the word, I hope I'm spelling this right, but Gomel, right? What does Gomel mean? We say it every day in our morning prayers. Baruch atah Hashem, how does it go? Gomel chasadim tovim la'amo Yisrael, right? Blessed are you, God, who gives bountiful kindness to his people Israel. So Gomel means to give, right? It means to give. A Gimel in Hebrew is a camel. What's a camel designed for? To get stuff from point A to point B. Like they said, the baby camel says to the mama camel, why do I have these big eyelashes? And the mama camel says, so that you can keep the dust out of your eye, the sand out of your eyes while you walk through the desert. And why do I have these big ugly feet? And the mom says, so that you have good traction while you're running through slippery sand. And they say, why do I have this big hump on my back? And the mama says, so that you can store water for your long trips during the desert. And the baby says, if I have big hoofs to land in the sand, and I have water to keep my hydration through the desert, and I have eyelashes to keep the sand in my eyes, why in heaven am I in the Bronx Zoo, right? So that does warrant a chuckle. So camel is all about getting things from point A to point B. Gomel, the concept of giving, benevolent giving, is the concept of the Gimel. Okay? What is that? What is that?
You said Gomel and you said Gimel, so what is the meaning of Gimel?
Gimel itself is a letter. But there is a Gimel, which is a camel, and there's Gomel, which means to give. Right? So those are 2 Hebrew words that sound just like Gimel, and therefore they're related.
So
Those
that's the
2
meaning.
words are
Same root.
spelled exactly the same way, but just a different
Same root.
a vowel point
Right.
underneath.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the meaning, is what you're saying.
That's the meaning. Yep. The shape is a man running forward to give charity. The meaning is to give, and to give abundantly. So if we said the numerical value is 3, and that represents harmony, and the Gimel itself represents giving charity, giving tzedakah, right? What does that come to teach us? How do you get to a harmonious world? Is it by being selfish and trying to take everything? On a camel. How do you get to the new world? On a camel. God bless us. If we want to get to harmony, we want to get to world peace, it's going to be through us selflessly giving, right? It has to be through us caring about each other. It's not going to be by us being islands, right? You're not going to be able to be a community with just one, and with just two, of course, we fight. With three, we can start to have a community, right? So that's the meaning of the Gimel. Thoughts, questions on the Gimel? Okay. Go to the fourth letter, Dalet, and I'm actually going to move this Gimel over because I think it's going to help. The fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Dalet. I kind of made a little wavy Dalet there, but that's okay. So the Dalet, this is our Gimel, right? You all remember our friend the Gimel. The Dalet is above and above, right? So you'll notice the Dalet is very close in appearance to the Resh. The Resh is one of the last letters, and I drew it short there. But the Resh is going to have a curved top right side. The Dalet has a part that protrudes backwards, right? So Dalet makes the sound of a D, obviously, and it's not going to change either, not like the Beit did. But the meaning of the Dalet, the graphic design of the Dalet is it's kind of humbly, it wants to be proud, so it faces away from the person who's giving, but it still holds a hand back because it really needs that charity, right? It needs that partnership. So the word dolet in Hebrew actually means a poor person, right? It also means a doorpost, kind of like a mezuzah, because they would go door to door, right, knocking and asking for charity. So the Gimel represents giving, the Dalet represents receiving. In the literature, in common sense, what part of humanity do these two letters represent? The Gimel is the one who gives the, let's say, seed, right? And the Dalet is the one that receives the seed, right? So it's almost like the Gimel's masculine and the Dalet's feminine. Does that make sense? Which fits pretty well because the numerical value of Gimel is 3. The numerical value of Dalet is 4, right? In Hebrew, in Judaism, we have 3 people we call fathers. Who were the 3 fathers of Judaism?
The patriarchs.
The patriarchs.
Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's exactly right. So that's representative of the Gimel giving the seed. The Dalet is 4. There's only 4 people in Judaism that we call mothers. Who are the 4 people we call mothers in Hebrew?
The matriarchs.
The matriarchs, who are Sarah,
Raquel,
Rivka.
Rivka,
Rachel's on the list.
Rachel, and Leah.
Rachel and Leah, right. So Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah, those are the 4 matriarchs. So that's, you got the papas and the mamas, okay? So the Gimel is rushing to give. The Dalet is rushing to receive. The Dalet, again, makes a D sound, so we covered that. It's got the numerical value of 4, which hints at the matriarchs, right? The idea of making the Jewish people, actually making it something. And interestingly enough, if you were to say that this is a vav up here, because a vav is just a straight line, if this is a vav and this is a vav, and the vav has numerical value of 6, as we'll soon see, then what's 6 plus 6? 12. How many tribes were there? 12 tribes. And they came forth from the mamas, right? Mamas and the papas, but the mamas. So that's the meaning of the letter Dalet. Its graphic design, the meaning of the word itself, its numerical value, and its sound. Questions on Dalet? Okay, we're cooking now.
You mentioned door a few times. Does that have anything to do with the graphic design?
Nope, just with this word here, Dalet, means. In fact, we have on our doors mezuzahs, right?
Actually, when they put the blood on, they put it on the lintel and doorpost,
Right.
which does kind of
No, kind of a little bit, right?
represent the graphic design.
A little bit. I see it. The word Dalet means like a doorpost. So I was going to say we have the mezuzahs on our door, right? The mezuzah, it's got a little Torah scroll in there. You touch it when you go by. You think about God's protection. On the mezuzah, what's written? On the front of the mezuzah, we have
Shema, the shin.
the shin, always a shin. What's that shin stand for? God's name, right?
Shaddai.
Almighty, God Almighty, Shaddai. So
And the first letter of the scroll inside is a shin.
it just happens to be a shin as well, which is for Shema. They say Shaddai can be an acronym, right? What's it an acronym for? Shomer, which means to guard. Dolte, the doorpost. Yisrael, of Israel. God guards the doorposts of Israel, which is why we have the mezuzah on the door. Dolte means doorpost. And the relation to a poor man is just because he'd go around knocking, kind of a thing. But this is also what this word means. But this word also means a poor person as well, if you change the vowels. And that's why we were saying before, the body of the letter is the letter itself. This makes the root. The soul of the letter is the vowels, because the vowels are going to change the meaning of the word entirely, right? And we'll talk about that when we get to the class on roots. But for now, just know this is a G and this is a D. Fair enough? Okay. Additional questions on Dalet? Nay. All right. So we remember what the Dalet looks like? See if we could do this a little bit. This is the fifth letter, the Hey. Okay? Might not come out very clear, but it's going to help us drive the point home. The fifth letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Hey. Hey represents the world. Hey has the sound, the phonic of a H, like we pronounce it. It's the light letter. You know how we said every letter you begin writing it with a yud? You always start up at the top left like you would a yud. Every letter that you speak is going to begin with the hey, right? Because every letter begins with breath, right? Ha, hey is breath. So,
Wait, you said the world, and then you're also saying breath. So it means the meaning is two things?
I'm getting to the world part. So how did God create the world? With 10 utterances, right? With his breath. And he breathed the breath of life into Adam's nostril. So, hey represents breath. It's the light letter, but at the same point it represents the world because we have this reality. So if you want to look at the graphic design here, if this is like a house, right, and you have your, there you go, your little happy Jew in there. There is a whole abyss below you, right? Down here is a whole place that you could fall into. And up here there's a little window where you could find the way out, where we could find God and godliness through it. So hey kind of represents the world in that sense. Also our sages say God's name is spelled with two heys, and it's with the hey that he created this world, right? Which again makes a lot of sense if you think that God created the world with utterances, Yehi or, let there be light, Yehi Rakia, let there be a firmament. It all begins with God's breath, God's words. That's why we say that the world was made with the letter hey. Hey also has the numerical value of 5. The numerical value of 5 is a very important number for a Jew. What does 5 represent for us? 5 books of the Torah, right? The 5 books of Moses. We're going to quiz you on that for sure. So 5 represents the Torah. And again, we said in the letter Beit, God created the world for 2 reasons. What were the 2 reasons?
2 reasons?
2 reasons God created the world. That's why the Torah begins with the letter Beit, which is 2. 2 reasons are 1, the Torah, right? The Hey. He created the world so that the Torah could be, so that Mashiach could come, so that Mashiach could be. And 2, God created the world for the second one. That's us, the Jewish people, right? Because he wanted this relationship with us. So Hey is kind of like the house where we can do it. If we remember, the Gimel gave the Yud here, right? This little dot that's hanging off to the Dalet, and now the Hey has the Yud within it, right? So we have, and I know we're just using lines here, so it doesn't really look like a dot, it looks like a line, but just kind of go with it. So the patriarchs, right, the Gimel, gave the Yud that they were carrying, the seed that they were carrying, to the Hey. The Hey now has a Yud in it. What's that sound like in human world? It's like pregnancy, right? There's the Dalet, which represents the woman, has the Hey now within her, so this is like pregnancy, giving birth, right? Being able to make a world, and that comes through the union of masculine and feminine, like we said before. Parenthetically, our sages say that it's very important for women to have a Hey in their name. If you can have a Hebrew name that has a Hey in it, very good. because we found out that Sarah, you may know, our mother Sarah, her name was once Sarai. And when she was Sarai, she couldn't have a baby, right? And then what happened? God went and changed her name and changed her name from Sarai, as it was. Sarai is spelled like that. And he changed her name. He took off the yud, gave it to Yoshua later. We're not talking about that tonight. And he replaced it with a hey. So now this says Sarah. Sarah, not Sarai anymore. Because she had the hey, she could conceive. She had Isaac, right? She had Yitzchak Avinu. Similarly, we find in the story of Rachel, our mother. Rachel, she had some trouble giving birth as well. So what did she do? She gave her handmaiden, Bilhah. Bilhah is spelled with 2 hays, right? I'm not sure if I'm spelling that right, but it's okay for now. Bilhah is spelled Bilhah. So Bilhah had 2 hays. She gave her handmaiden to Yaakov Avinu. So 1 hay went for Bilhah to have children, and the other hay went to Rachel, and she had her children as well, right? So very important should a girl have a hay in her name for the purposes of the mitzvah that women are commanded to do. We're all commanded to do, but it requires all of us. So that's the hay. What do we have? It makes a sound like huh. As we said, the yud is the beginning of every letter as you draw it, but the hey is the beginning of every letter as you say it. So hey makes a huh sound like an H. It has a numerical value of 5, which represents the Torah. It's also related to the concept of the world, because our sages say the world was created with the hay. And that's the meaning of the letter as well. Did we cover everything? Any questions on the hay then? Okay. All right, we've had too many easy letters. How about a tricky one? Excellent, I totally agree. The next letter is the Vav. The Vav is really just a line. It's a vertical line like we said before. So you'll see each letter is going to be made up of at least 1 Vav usually, right? Some are more round, so it's a little bit tougher. But the Vav is just a straight line. So it has the phonic. We'll start with the phonics. By itself, the Vav makes a sound like a V, like in Victor, right, or victory. However, if you ever see the Vav, and it's got a dot like this in it, it's got a dagish, and there's nothing below it, this is going to be pronounced like oo, okay? Like in clue. Like get a clue, this is obviously a oo sound, dude. That kind of oo. If the dot is in the middle, it's oo. If the dot is on top, we call this a cholam vav. It makes a O sound, like in oatmeal or Oak Street, or these examples are getting old. Those kind of O's, right? Again, no dot. What sound does it make with no dot? V, like a V. Dot in the middle? Oo, like in blue. And dot on top? Cholam vav. It's a O. O sound. So you're going to have to be careful because you're going to see the vav all over the place. It's one of the most used letters in the Torah. It could be meaning one of these 3 things anytime you see it. So think V, O, and U is what this letter could be, and it depends on what it looks like and where it is. Okay? The question.
With the vav and the colon vav.
Yeah.
So is it going to be an O in a word, or is it vo?
It would be just O, just plain O. Good question. Good question. So yeah, if you had a word, Tzion, right? Tzion is Zion. Tzion, right? This is Tzion, not Tzivon, right? Tzion. The V is totally gone if this letter is being used like a vowel. Okay?
Oh, so patak is under it, then the sound is
Then it's vav.
Then it would be V, right? So if we had a like that. That would be tzivan there, right? Again, we're not doing vowels tonight, but here we are. This would be tziun. Tzion, that's an actual word, Zion. Okay? Kosher? That's the phonetics. Now let's get down to the juice. Vav has the numerical value of 6. What does 6 represent in Judaism, Jewish life? There's this fun game we play at the end of Passover, of Pesach. It's Who Knows One. You guys know Who Knows One? Who knows one? I know one. 1 stands for the Holy One, blessed be He. And then who knows 2? Oh, I know 2. 2 stands for the 2 tablets. Who knows 3? I know 3. It's for the patriarchs. 4 is for the matriarchs. 5 is for the Torah. What's the 6 for? What is the 6 for? Creation. 6 days of creation. I like that. I'm very cool with that. It's a good guess. It's a good guess. Any other thoughts? The 6 orders of the Mishnah. Maybe that was a little bit tough. The oral law, the Torah is divided into the written Torah, which and this is important. We're not going to really cover feminine and masculine gender too much at all through our course, but this is a good place to mention it. The Torah speaks in masculine and feminine terms. Just like other languages, they have a masculine word, feminine word. You'll say le, whatever, or la, whatever. I don't speak that much French anymore, sorry. So you'll see Torah or, which is a light of Torah, and sometimes in the Bible, you'll find Torah ora, right? The feminine version. So what's the difference? The written law is masculine, because it's like a seed, right? Little dots on page. The oral Torah, the oral law, is the feminine expression, right? Because the man gives the seed and the woman develops it for 9 months, right? It's all about detail, length, width, height, etc., etc. So, Vav stands for the 6 orders of Mishnah. It's the way we understand and interpret the Bible, right? Because without it, the Bible can be very difficult to interpret. We have situations, for example, God tells us, I want you to make tzitzit, I want you to make fringes, right, on the corners of your garments throughout your generation. Exactly what does that mean? Because the fringes look different for every person. The oral law will teach us what that means. The written Torah says, I want you to put totafos on your head. What is totafot? Totafot in the Shema. Phylacteries. If you don't know what totafos are, you're not going to know what phylacteries are. It's tefillin. That needs to be taught to us. The Torah says that you need to take 4 kinds of beautiful fruit and beautiful trees, and you need to take those 4 kinds and wave them in a certain way under the sukkah. The Torah doesn't tell us what 4 species those are, right? This needs to be taught to us by the oral law. So again, there are many, many, many more examples, but we can't really interpret the Bible without the teaching that was brought with it from Moses on Mount Sinai down to us today. And that's the meaning of Vav being 6. It's also the meaning of the graphic design of the Vav. As you can see, the Vav is just a straight line. It comes from high up, and it goes all the way down to our level. That's the design of the Vav, which is symbolic, symbolizing a connection, and that's the meaning of the word Vav, connection. A connection from on high to down low. So you'll find, what's the connection between us and God? Can we do the Aleph again? Mashiach. Mashiach, right. So how do we do that? It's God up on top, right? It's us below. What connects us? It's the Vav, right? The Vav is the connecting piece. The connecting piece is the Torah, which is Mashiach. The Word made flesh and dwelt among us. So that's the Torah. Because of that, you'll find, fascinatingly enough, in the Torah scroll, when we lift up the Torah scroll, Vezo ta Torah, right? And we all look at the Torah and we say, oh, that's the Torah. You don't point. So you'll find that the Torah is written in columns, right? 248 columns in a Torah scroll. All but 10 of those 248 columns begin with the letter Vav, because it's God's connection to us. Similarly speaking about Mashiach, right? Mashiach being the Torah. Mashiach, the word Vav represents connection. The word Vav literally is a nail, right? It's got a little head and a long body, and it's like a nail that you would pound into something, right? So Mashiach got our nails, right? And Mashiach is the nails that keep us together with God, right? Vav is connection. It's all about connection. Furthermore, the Vav, if you have it in the beginning of the word, and we're not going to do prefixes and suffixes tonight, but I can't help it.
You said all but what of the 248?
10. All but 10 of the 248 columns of the Torah. So if we have this vav in the beginning, to try to keep it simple, any vav that is, we'll make it a little bigger really quick. Okay, so we have the word beit, veit, right, which means house, like we said before. If we have a vav before it with the u, this turns into uveit. Anytime there's a vav in the beginning of a word, it means and. Okay? So again, and house connects the house to whatever was coming before, right? You say ele means these. Ele, because the vav's in front, it means and these, right? These plus whatever was before. Okay? So the vav, again, is connecting this to that. Also, and then we're not going to get into, I know, tenses tonight, but I can't help myself, so here we go. If you were to spell the first two letters, we'll spell it effectively for you. How's that sound? The first two letters are beit and aleph. This makes a word, it's bo, come, right? Right now it says vo, because the dagesh isn't in there, but there's a reason for that. If you put a yud in front, it turns into yavo, will come, right? If you put a vav in front of that, v'yavo means came, right? So not only does vav mean and, but if it's in the beginning of the word, it could also mean connecting the past to the future, right? Because the future tense, and this only happens when there's a yud there, but and we're not talking about prefixes tonight, but just understand that vav is the connector letter, the connection letter, and it can connect past and future, it can connect two objects, and it connects us to God, and it is the Torah, right? So that's what you need to know about vav. Again, the numerical value of 6 representing the 6 orders of the oral law, the Mishnah, which is how we interpret this Torah that we've been given. Any questions on vav? What sound does this make? Oh, right. What about this? And this? Ooh, very good. All right, so you guys are like pros at vav now, so we can go on. All right, vav is the 6th letter. The 7th letter is the zayin. The zayin, I'm going to try to draw on the stam actually for us. In the regular block print, you're usually going to do something like this. This is a zayin, right? But I want to draw the stam for you just because I think it's going to help us out here. Okay. The stam print font, which is here, this is the block, right? This is the stam. It's an acronym for Sefer, like for Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzah. So this is any kind of holy writing. You're going to use this kind of font. But I wanted to show you because I think it's going to help illustrate what we're talking about here. To John's point, the vav represents 6. This is the 6 days of the week, right? The 7th day is Shabbat. The numerical value of the zayin is 7. Zayin, the letter zayin here, of course, makes a Z sound, and there's nothing tricky about it. So the zayin makes a Z sound, has a numerical value of 7, which represents soul in body, right? On the 6th day, we have work, mundane work, physical work. On the 7th day, we have the delight of Shabbat, we have the delight of God within the work of our hands, right? You only have on Shabbat what you prepared before Shabbat, right? Similarly in the world that we experience now. Zayin is a crowned letter. In fact, there are 7 letters that have crowns on it, which is why I wanted to show you the stam here. And all the letters that have crowns on it, they all have this same kind of crown with the zayin top here. So what we say is that the vav was a masculine, right? And this is the woman who's on top of the man. That's Eshet Chayil, the Proverbs 31 woman. The woman of valor is the crown of her husband, right? So this is the soul in body, or the man with the woman, which is the complete picture, which is why 7 is the value of completion. Shabbat means completion, right? Parenthetically, this could also be a sword, right? Like the crowns on top could be like like the grip, and this is kind of the handle here, and then the knife goes down. So similarly, in our relationships, right, it could be good or bad depending on how we do it. So if we can add God to our relationship, then it's going to obviously be a lot better. I know that this really isn't the time for it, but we got a couple of minutes, so I want to show you. In Hebrew, if you're going to spell man, it's ish, like this. If you want to spell woman, it's isha, like this. Okay? Aleph, Yud, Shin, Aleph, Shin, Hey. What's the common letters, Aleph and Shin? The two distinct letters are Yud and Hey. Yud and Hey spells God's name, right? Spells Ka, spells God's name. So if you take God out of a husband and a wife, a man and a woman, what are you left with? Aish. The word Aish means fire, destruction, right? So you need to implant God into your relationships. Double fire, right? Not so fun. But you could use the two furnaces to be able to create something really good, right? So that's the idea of the Zion, which is 7. And the numerical value in the shape. Any questions on Zion? Pretty easy letter.
The shape, the graphic design, are we only looking at the one on the left?
So they're supposed to be the same. You know, in the Torah, it's written like this, so this is the one you should really know. However, when you're using it, you're probably going to see that a little bit more often. They mean the same thing, which is why I wanted to show you both.
You know, part of Hebrew 1 is to learn to read and write. The block style is what you really need
Probably be
to
used.
do. You're not going to be drawing pictures, not like you did.
Good point, good point. So again, that's why I wanted to show you the two. Any other questions on Zion? Ready for our last 3? Baruch Hashem. The meaning of Zion is like a knife, right? But it could be a knife used to cut, or a knife used to hurt, or it could be a knife used to cut meat for food, right?
You want to spend about 60 seconds talking about Stom?
Wait, time out. English.
Stam.
I don't know what that is.
Stam is the font,
It's an acronym.
and it's an acronym for, I'm stepping on my cord here. Stam is for Sefer, Tefillin, and Mezuzah. So these are the 3 things in Jewish life that require a parchment that you need to write on them in a special way so that you can hit everything that you need to hit. In the back pages of your book where the practice letters are, you'll see that we add the Stam is the one on the far right. That's the Stam font, the way that it would appear in a Torah scroll. The book print is the one right next to that. That's what you'll see in like any book. And then the block print is next to that. That's what, as Bob said, Rebbe Tzalel, you'll probably be using to write with.
What is Sefer?
Sefer means scroll, Sefer Torah.
Scroll.
Tefillin, of course, is the black boxes men wear. The mezuzah we talked about earlier goes on the door. And so that's just a font. Just a font is all. A font of useful knowledge.
It's a font used by a trained.
Scribe, right. But it comes to teach us a lot about the real meaning of the letter. And sometimes those meanings get left out. For example, the hey. We talked about the hey before. If you're just writing a hey, I write it like that, right? This almost looks like a resh and a yud, as opposed to a dalet and a yud, which is really what the hey is more like. You know what I mean? Just an example. Any other questions? Stam, good question. All right, we ready for the next one? Since we love Stam so much, let's do the next one in Stam, huh? Am I driving everyone crazy yet?
Oh gosh. No. You gotta.
That's not very flat, is it? Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. I was wondering where we were going with that.
This is the chet, the 8th letter, as it would appear in, and I think it's got a one of those things on it, am I right? Not a 3 for just a 1.
It's got that next to it.
Gotcha. So I drew it this way so that it would be able to illustrate that this is really a combination of two letters with a little bridge in between, right? If you see this in a book, it's going to look like this, right? Very plain. And you kind of lose this meaning here. But really what a chet is it's a vav and a zayin put together. The chet itself makes the ch sound, which is not a sound that we have in English, so that's a little bit tough. But it's the ch sound that you would find in Hanukkah. It's a guttural sound, and you produce it by taking the, if you can kind of picture the uvula, right, the little hanging ball in the back of your throat. You kind of bounce that off the back of your tongue a couple of times. Ch. Typically, you're going to want to try to get 3 bounces for a normal sounding letter. Ch. If it's a quick one, it'll be just 2. Ch. Or if it's really emphasizing it, like when you say Shema, you say Shema Hashem Echad, right? You want to get 4 or 5 in there if you're trying to emphasize it. So, chet, again, makes the sound ch, which is a guttural sound that doesn't exist in English, but it's the same sound you'll find in Hanukkah or in chai, like they say l'chaim, right? L'chaim means to life, and it's produced by bouncing the uvula off the back of your tongue a little bit. Ch. So you can practice that at work. You don't need spit to make the ch sound, all right? It's not about hock and loogies over here. It's the flesh of your uvula bouncing off your tongue. Comes from the throat, right? It's a guttural letter. Right. It's involved with spit sometimes, but that's not what we're driving at. The ch sound. So that's the phonic of the chet. The chet has the numerical value of 8. So if we say that 6 represents the soul, the body, no soul, right? The 6 days of work, but no Shabbos. And 7 represents the 6 days of work and Shabbos, so it represents soul in body, which is the natural course of nature. Then 8 has to be Messiah's number, right? And we find there's lots of different things that are represented by the letter, or the number 8. For example, the boy is circumcised, his bris is on the 8th day, he gets his circumcision. What are some other famous 8s? The tabernacle was opened on the 8th day after its dedication. Hanukkah, as we're going to be observing here soon, is observed over 8 days, which signifies the persistence of God throughout the face of history, all the adversaries that have tried to destroy us and destroy Judaism and Torah Judaism specifically. Hanukkah is the preservation of Torah Judaism within the presence of all of those adversaries. So 8, again, is a very, very messianic number, and there are many, many, many more examples.
Renewal, new beginning.
Renewal, new beginning, right? When we start
Once we go through the cycle of 7,
that's a good point.
the 8th day is the first day of the next week.
Right, we can't do 8 by ourselves in this world, right? When we try to do 8, we go, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Wednesday, right? Friday, we got Shabbos, then we come back to Sunday. We don't have 8, right? We can't branch into 8. 8 has to be, we need assistance for 8, right? That has to come from on high. It's something new. How do you say new in Hebrew? It's the word chodesh. How do you spell chodesh? With a chet. Quick point of distinction here. When you're making your chet like regular, make sure you get that left foot all the way up to the top that you can. Otherwise, people might think it's a hay. And it happens, let me tell you. So, the sound, the phonic of the chet is going to be a ch sound, the guttural. The numerical value is 8, which alludes to Messiah, right? The coming together of God and humanity. What about the graphic design? What does this teach us? And this is why I wanted to draw this in the stam, so that you'd be able to see that this is a vav, right? This is a vav and this is a zayin. And they're connected by this little bridge on top. And you find even this little triangle, you'll find that in the Torah itself. Very important that that's there. So it's like the vav is the man, the zayin is the woman, right? Because she's got the crown. The woman of valor is the crown of her husband. And they're connected underneath the chuppah, right? Which also, I believe, is spelled with a chet. What does the chuppah symbolize? This is where the bride and groom come to get married, right? The covering of God and the man and woman under the covering of God getting married, right? So Again, chet represents 8, represents covenant, right? The new covenant. The covenant that we have between God and us, that no matter what happens, he's always going to be our God, and we are always going to be his people. Come heaven or high water, right? So again, the little triangle here represents the chuppah, man and woman under the chuppah, which again is under God's dwelling. We know that there are 3 circles in the wedding chuppah. There's the ring that the man gives to the husband. There's the circles that the woman makes around the man, representing the house. And then there's the chuppah, which is like the covering, the circle above, which is God covering us. So again, chet represents 8, represents our marriage with God. Again, a very messianic number. So that's the graphic design. The meaning of the word chet, very closely related to the graphic design. So I don't think we need to go into all of that.
Number 3 of the 3 circles, Scott, please.
Number 3,
Ring,
God.
ring, circles a woman makes around the man.
And then the chuppah itself is
Makes
the
a
third
house.
circle. Makes the house, right? Technically, the woman's making the house with the circles she does, but, you know.
Okay.
God is between that. God is part of that covenant, and that's kind of the point. So this is a chet, a ches. Any questions?
Cool.
Right on. Okay. 2 more. So, the 9th letter, is the tet, and it's kind of like, got a head like this, and then kind of comes around like that. In the block form in your book, it's a lot more square, right? So it'll probably be something like this. Okay, is that about right? In the stam, it's basically a little prettier, but it's the same thing. More like that. Not so big a curve inside. So the idea here is we have, well, let's start with the phonics. So the tet makes it sound like a T, like in Thomas, or in, can't even think of a word, tango. How about tango? T sound, very simple. The tet is the least used letter in the alphabet, in the Torah. The tet appears only a handful of times, I think maybe like 900 times, whereas something like the yud or the vav appear 26,000 times in the letters of the Torah, right? So you don't see this letter portrayed too often. It makes it sound like a T. It has a numerical value of 9. 9 comes to refer us to the idea of not quite there, right? Right? 10 is perfection. 10 is completion. 10 is the 10 Commandments, the decimal system alone. But 9 is not quite there. So you need a little something else, right? So in that sense, the tet represents desire to a certain extent. What's the shape of the tet, or the tes? It's almost like, and I'm not sure which of these helps better with that, but if you kind of picture this like the head and this like the tail, it's almost like a coiled snake, right? It almost has the graphic design like a coiled snake. So the idea here is the desire, right? This whatever we feel is lacking in our lives could be a snake for us, or it could be something else. What's the most common time in the Torah that we see the word or the letter tet used? It's an extraordinarily common word in Judaism today. You hear it all the time. It's a name. Tov, right? Tov. What does Tov mean? Tov means good. Tov means good. So this desire, right? This desire that we have to be able to connect to God is a good thing. It's a powerful thing. It's a useful thing. At the same point, you better watch out because it could turn into a snake really quick for you, right? So the idea of the tet is about taking the reality that God's given us and turning it into something positive. By being able to see the tov, the good, behind the apparent issue, right? Behind the packaging that it's given to us in. You might remember a story from the Talmud about Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu. Remember this guy? He had a famous saying, Gamzu latova, Gamzu latova. This is tov, this is tova. It's the same word, just masculine and feminine. Tov is masculine, tova is feminine. So Gamzu Latova means this too is for the good. This too is for good. Tova, huh? So there's a story they tell. It was the Roman times. The emperor at the time had laid a terrible decree onto his town in Israel because it was under Roman occupation. They send Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu here to the emperor, to Caesar's palace, not the one in Vegas, the one that's in Rome. And they went there and they said, and for him to decree or to beseech the king that he should reverse this evil decree. So he's the guy who always said, Gamzu Latova, this too is for good, let's send him off. They send him with a box of jewels, right? And it takes a little while to get to Rome from Israel. So he had to stay overnight. In the process of him staying overnight, the way I heard the story, he had went out to pray, right? He's a good Jew, he's going to pray. He kept his box of jewels that he was going to present to the emperor safe. And somebody knew, oh, this Jew is going to be praying for a long time. So they went and they stole his jewels, right? The jewels was all the money that the town had to be able to, hopefully rescind this evil decree. And the jewels were stolen. They put sand in the box afterwards to be able to keep the weight the same so that he wouldn't know. So he gets to the Roman emperor, gets to the Caesar, and he says, Caesar, we have this decree. It's become an issue for us. We need you to stop it. We're going to give you this box of jewels. Please receive our request, And, the Caesar has the box open for him, and inside it's just a bunch of dirt. So, this is a death sentence. You can't go into an emperor's throne room and say, here's a box of dirt, do what I want. You could get your head cut off. So, Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu, he saw the dirt in the box. What do you think? What would we say, right? What do you think it would say, a normal human would say, if they saw the box, it had priceless jewels in it, and now it's filled with dirt? They'd say, oy vey, right? They wouldn't say Gamzu Latova. Yeah. Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu, he didn't say oy vey. He said Gamzu Latova. This is actually good. This is also for the good. I can't maybe see it. I might not be able to understand it fully yet. But I know that it's good. I know that it's for the good. So at that moment, God sent the angel Gabriel, disguised as one of chambermen or some kind of servant minister, what have you, whispered in the Caesar's ear and said, these Jews, they're not such dumb people, right? They're scholars. They're smart people. So clearly he would have known if he came here and gave you sand, he'd be killed. This must be the special sand, the special dirt that our Abraham, the father of the Jewish people, used in the war of the 4 kings versus the 5 kings. They say the sand, he would throw it and it would turn into spears and arrows and it would destroy his enemies. So the Caesar said, what a kingly gift. And he says, give this man a box of jewels for his trouble and we'll rescind the decree. And parenthetically, I heard that the Caesar went and used that sand and it worked. And he was able to conquer one of the places he was trying to conquer at the time, all on the merit of us seeing the issue as good, even though most of us would see that issue as bad, right? So that's the power of the Tet, that we could be able to transform bad to good. And it's all about our perception. It's all about the way we can think about it, the way we can perceive it. So that's the Tet. Makes a T sound. Number 9 represents us trying to get there. It can represent the snake. It can represent goodness, Tovim. And it's up to us to decide what we're going to take it as. Questions on the Tet? Are we ready for the last letter? All right, the last letter we've talked about a bunch tonight, but we didn't actually learn it, so let's learn it. The 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Yud. I'm drawing it in the stam here because I guess I've gotten in the style. But as we did before, we had this word Tov, right? So there's Tov. If you were to put Eem after it, Tovim means goodness, like good plural, right? Like this is good in relation to lots of things. It's maybe not the best word to use, but you could see the size relation of the Yud compared to the other letters. Again, all the Hebrew letters hang down. They don't rest on the line. They hang from the top because the Torah comes from God. It comes from a very high place and comes down to a low place. That's the symbolism of the Vav. But the Yud is the smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It hangs on the line. It floats in the air. It has the phonic, the sound of a Y. So it makes a Y sound. So if we were to have, let's see here. We had the the word bo before, right? Bo means come. Bigger. Well, why not? We'll use the cholim. Spell it both ways. We'll get to that part. So this is bo, right? Bo means come. If we take the dagashat and we add a yud, yavo means will come, right? We say hu yavo, he will come, Mashiach will come. So it has the sound ya, as in like yo-yo, okay? That's the sound of the yud. At the same point you saw before, it could also be used like the English Y is to make a vowel sound. We used it for tovim earlier, right? Bereshit is also spelled with a yud to make that eat sound. So the yud could make a sound like a Y, or it could make a sound like a vowel, like a E sound, or an A sound. So as we're going to...
Like the Y in English.
Like the Y in English. Very similar. Like in play, for example, the Y is kind of like that. So when the yud's making a Y sound, it's part of the root of the word. I know we're not talking about roots tonight so much, but it's important to know. If it's pronounced with a y sound like in yo-yo, then it's going to be part of the root. If it's not pronounced, or if it's not pronounced like a Y sound, it's pronounced more like an E or an A or an I sound, then it's not going to be part of the root most of the time. Most of the time. So the two most common servant letters that you're going to see in words are the vav and the yud. Okay? The vav and the yud, these two here, are like the two most common servant letters. And we'll talk about servant letters when we get to roots. But for now, know that just like the vav, you can make, this will be vowels at least half the time for you, if not more. So just kind of keep that in mind. So that's the phonic of the yud. What's the gematria, the numerical value of yud? 10. So you'll notice each of these letters is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. After this, when we get to the next letter, which we're not going to cover tonight, but it's a chuf. When we get to the chuf, the kaf sound, that's going to be 20. All right, so it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 200, 300, 400. Those are the numbers as they go down the line. Again, that should be on the sheet. What's that? The third sheet in your workbook.
Right column.
And that has the gematria.
Not the vowels. No.
Right, not the vowels. So there you have that. The yud has the numerical value of 10. What does 10 represent in Judaism? Pause. Oh, okay.
Completeness?
10 represents completeness, right? 10% battery. 10 represents the Torah, right? The 10 commandments. 5 on one side, 5 on the other. This is 10. It represents perfection, completion. So, who is complete and perfect? Hashem, right? Hashem, God is complete and He's perfect. So because of this, the yud is another letter that's very closely identified with God. In fact, how do you spell God's name? It starts with the letter yud. Yud and hey and vav and hey. So now you know all the letters tonight to be able to actually spell God's name. Which brings us to our first warning. Don't use God's name. Don't write that out. You saw me earlier write out the yud and hey and vav and hey. You'll notice I put dots in between, right? If we're spelling God's name here. Because you don't want to, if you write God's name is holy. You know, and we need to treat it as such. The third commandment of the 10 commandments is, don't take my name in vain. So because of that, we want to try to be respectful of that. So if you know the actual Hebrew of God's name, very important you treat it with respect. Like I said, I put dots in between so it's not a word anymore. Something that you can do because it would be forbidden to, as I'm doing now, erase the name of God, but it's not the name of God because I put the dots there, right? So, just etiquette.
You also write
a root word, right, would be the same thing, indicating that it's not a word. We're just putting letters on the board for educational purposes, right? That's what dots in letters like that mean. So the yud, 10 represents the 10 commandments. It represents the system of completion. 10 also references the 10 sfirot, right? The 10 attributes of God. And in fact, of the 10 attributes of God, Yud represents one of the most primary one, you could say, is Chokhmah, wisdom, right? Wisdom is like a little spark. It's a little dot, right? The Hey, as we learned earlier, if this is a Hey and this is a Yud, the Hey really takes the energy of the Yud, the spark of wisdom, the dot, and this is like a little bit of a big Hey, or Yud rather, and it gives it length and it gives it width, right? It gives it height, it gives it breadth, and it gives it expansion. That's the idea. So Hey represents Bina, understanding, because wisdom is the spark, and then we develop that spark. That's another little bit of a deeper meaning of the letters Yud and Hey. So Yud represents wisdom, and that's very important to remember in anything that you're reading a little bit deeper Torah secret stuff. Yud always represents wisdom. Chokhmah, right? Absolutely true. What about the graphic design of the Yud? So you'll notice the Yud is a dot. Chokhmah is Chokhmah. Wisdom is wisdom because it is a non-entity, right?
More of a jot.
More of a jot, or a tittle, if you will. So we'll know that the dot is like the seed, right? It starts as something very small and grows and expands, and the earth is like the woman, right? Who's going to be the womb that's going to bring this into a functional person, a functional creation. So the Yud is just a dot. It's just a spark, and from that everything expands. That's why Yud is Chokhmah, because wisdom is really just the desire to connect to God, the desire for someone to be able to connect to God, so it's really functional in that way. You'll notice here, and I tried to emphasize it, that there's a little crown, a little thorn on the top of the Yud right there. Right? This represents the line of Keter, the line of the crown of God's kingship that's coming down into the Yud, right? Wisdom doesn't get energy from itself. It all comes from a source. It all comes from God. And that's more of the meaning of the letter Yud itself. As far as the meaning of the word Yud, Yud, if you spell it without vowels, makes this word Yad, hand, which parenthetically is this hilarious finger that I have here. This is like a Yad, right? A Yad means hand. We talked about the numerical values. What's the numerical value of Yad? 14, right? Why? Because the Yud is 10 and the Dalet's 4. 14. So if you count your hand, right? You have your hand, I guess it's easier this way. You have 3 bones in your thumb, right? Let me see if I'm doing this right. 2 bones in your thumb and 3 in each finger. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, right? That makes a hand. Yad is a hand because it's got 14 bones, right? In the phalanges alone. I know it's not getting that technical tonight.
14 knuckles.
14 knuckles, I guess you could say, sure. So the meaning of Yud is this hand that reaches out for God to connect with us. Also, if you don't use the ah pronunciation, but you use the Yiddish, and I know we're not doing too much Yiddish tonight, but what's a Yid?
A Jew.
A Yid is a Jew, right? Which is interesting, and we can close on this point. Why are the Jewish people called the Jewish people? We find the first time in the Bible the Jewish people are referred to as the Jewish people back in the days of Shushan, the Purim story, where Mordechai was called Mordechai HaYehudi. The Yehudi, he was a Jew, right? The Judean, which is interesting because he was really from the tribe of Binyamin, from Benjamin, right? So why would it say Yehudi? Back in that time, there were 2 sects or 2 groups of exiled Jews. There were ones they called themselves the Israelites, and there were the others they called themselves the Yehudim. Not to make any distinction today, that was a long time ago, but it teaches us an important lesson.
Northern and southern kingdoms. Right?
Yes. So what's the difference between the northern and southern kingdoms? The southern kingdom still had the temple, and they tried to keep the festivals. I mean, it was a smattered past.
Yehudi.
The Yehudi, right. So the idea, the Israelites were, this is my native country I come from. Whereas the Yehudim, right, the Jews, these are people who honored God in every way. What does the name Yehuda mean? Praise, right? Hodu, you're praising God, because Leah praised God when she had Yehuda. So the Jew is the one who praises God all the time, and that's also the meaning of the Yud. As we said back in the beginning, I just have to do it again because I'm loving it. The Aleph, the first letter, represents God, right? There's the Yid down here. There's the Yud up there. And there's the nail that connects us, right? So this is God, this is us, and it's the Torah that connects us. It's the only way that we can connect to God is through His Torah, through His mitzvahs. This has been the first 10 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Are there any last questions on the Yud before we close? Not so much? Baruch Hashem. Well, we'll close with a quick prayer then. Hashem, Toda Rabbah, thank you so much for the opportunity we have to engage in the study of your language, of your holy tongue, of your word, so that we can get deeper into the Torah and connect with you in a more stronger way, with hopefully developing more intimacy between us, that we could understand you better, help the world to understand you better, and thereby hasten the coming of Mashiach even quicker, and may it be speedily in our days. When this B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Thank you guys. Please join us next week.